Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, welcome to Night Vision. Glad you could join us. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner to you people here in the United States, where we celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday in November every year. So hope you guys all got together with your families and friends and are enjoying it on through the weekend. Tonight, we're going to be addressing a situation that has, for some reason, in recent years, or maybe not so recent, very, very politicized. But we're just going to be examining the facts. The name of tonight's show is The End is Near. Is it? We're talking about climate change. We're talking about global warming. We're talking about all those issues that the Earth is facing, all of us around the world. Now I'm going to bring on, of course, our wonderful historian, James Martin, and he is going to, he's been doing some work in this area of environmental assistance, I would say, and along with a colleague of his who we're going to be bringing on shortly. But Jay, it's coincidental that we decided, prior to do this show on environment, and then just this week, as we were discussing the show, you had to hang up on me to take a very important call regarding the environment. So could you just explain a little bit about what you've been doing recently and what that's all about?
Yeah, evening or morning, everyone. Good to be back. So in my day job in teaching, so firstly, having written and researched a environmental program, in fact, I believe Europe's first of its kind. We've just finished 3 pilots this year. It's meant that some of the people that I speak to, both politically and within the European trade union movement, have been delegates over at COP, and they've been discussing everything from waste management right the way through to the effects of general warming on the planet. So the phone call that I had to take was dealing with some of the issues relating to waste with the Ukraine conflict, but also some of the considerations around waste generally and climate change, the amount of waste that we're pumping into the oceans, but also then the mining, the ordnance that's been left in the battle zones across Ukraine. Plus, war is a very wasteful thing, not just on a human level, but also because you have, if you're evacuating in a hurry from your house and what have you, the first thing you're not doing is looking for a bin or does this go into recycling and all of that. So that was really one part of the discussion. As for the other part, I can't really go too far into it because it's still a little bit sensitive. So that's what we've been, what I've been doing this week, and also speaking about the environment program that's launched with some university professors too, who've paid quite an interest into it as well.
Yeah, it's to me like there was a time, say pre-2000, and maybe like after that, people were really on board with this idea of fighting climate change and fighting the environmental changes that we have going on. For instance, I remember, I think it was the year 2000 that the late R.L. and Whitley Strieber came out with their book. I think the book itself was called The Coming Global Superstorm. And it was about the environment, where the planet is headed. And it was really interesting because at the front of the book, both Art and Whitley gave quotes at the beginning of the book, and Art Bell said, "To my fellow humans who will live to see man's handiwork unfold as nature returns balance to the planet." And then Whitley Strieber said, "The children of tomorrow look back on our era as the one where the healing of the earth began." And everybody was pretty much on board with that line of thinking. A large group of the population. But at some point, they sort of began to split off, including, if I might say so, the late Art Bell started then, sort of backtracking and sort of, in my mind, it sounded like he was supportive of big oil and, fossil fuels and all this. And I thought that was astounding. He was writing about it on his Facebook page, and I made a comment and said, "Art, didn't you book about climate change?" And of course he didn't answer me, and he probably blocked me after that. I don't know, but anyway, I knew Art Bell. I worked with Art Bell, and I know how he felt about it back then, and I did understand that flip. And I was wondering if you had some idea of when that position to addressing any problems that we might have started, and why. And I don't know if this might be a good time to bring on our guest too. We've got a colleague of yours, James, with us tonight, who done some work in the environmental area, teaches environmental classes, that sort of thing. So would you like to bring your guest on?
Yeah, and it's a great question to just to introduce. He's been on the show before. This is Sean Halsall, fellow trade unionist, and again has been involved in delivering environmental programs. In fact, the same program I was just referring to myself. I think to firstly just say hello to Sean.
Hi, and thanks for having me back again. It's a pleasure to be back here.
Oh, so wonderful to see you again, Sean.
I think it's really, by the 90s, certainly late 90s, that the impact of the scale of change that was occurring in the across the planet begins to be resisted by, let's face it, big oil and moneyed interests. We had already by that point outlawed CFCs in tackling the hole in the ozone layer. So it's not, it's not that the planet.
CFCs. What's that acronym?
Chlorofluorocarbons. These damaging chemicals that left parts of the planet, namely in the southern hemisphere, Australia, Antarctica, directly exposed to solar radiation. So we saw, and we're still dealing with the effects of that as the hole in the ozone layer is still repairing. We're still seeing elevated rates of cancer for those directly exposed to that. My point being is, we managed to come together to resolve that issue. By the 90s, though, where we're looking at people, filling up with what you call it gas, we call it petrol, but filling up their tanks in their car, when you can afford to do so. But whenever there's change, people will resist. It's a perfectly normal thing for humans to do. But the rate of resistance, the amount of money that's going into politics and pressure groups and things like this, it certainly explodes. We want to carry on extracting dead dinosaurs and plant matter in the form of oil. And we want to carry on making money on this. And this environment, this pesky environment problem is going to cause a problem with that.
Yeah, and just to jump in, I would say we really see it start to really ramp up just after the financial crash in the late 2000s, when we see the financial institutions crash and people are looking for a way to make quick money again. And I think fossil fuels are probably one of the quickest ways, and energy, to make money. It's a natural monopoly. Everyone needs it now. We're all addicted and hooked on energy. I think
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting, to look back and see, but it always boils down to money. No matter, if you dig deep enough, especially if you find something that, has adverse aspects to it, and you wonder why in the world would we want to do that, it's because somebody's making money from it, and a lot of money. So that's the thing. Now, James, you have been involved in some of the, or at least in talks and advising on some of the problems of waste management that have been caused by the war in Ukraine. And I guess waste is becoming a huge issue there. Can you explain, what it is that's the problem there, and what it is that they're trying to do?
Well, there's relief efforts. I mean, in a nutshell, recapping, what I've just gone through in the introduction, you've got an issue where the country's mobilized for war, and that includes people who pick up your trash, as you guys call it, or rubbish for us. They're mobilized into the war effort. These aspects, we saw this with Hurricane Katrina, where the focus, certainly from the federal government, was lacking, but the focus in the area is, protecting people's lives. Unfortunately, whilst you're dealing with floodwaters there, and in Ukraine, you're dealing with, lack of power. You're dealing with, the harsh winter that's faced.
They've got no water. So how, you can't flush the toilet. So I mean, to be quite blunt.
So waste isn't just about the trash. It's exactly that. You've got issues with the stuff that goes down the toilet, your own waste, lack of water, it becomes unsanitary. Plus, when it comes to waste processing, a lot of those plants are dependent on energy, of which the Russians, Iranians, and the Belarusians have been targeting energy supplies. And the knock-on effect there is you end up with, the rise of diseases, cholera, things like this, that we think were issues dealt with, 2 centuries ago, that are actually, always on the cusp of returning, because we rely on energy, we rely on water. The problems with war, it's not just the tank versus tank, or the missiles. It's the human stuff as well, and we know that the side effect from this is also those who have particularly weakened immune systems. People do anyway in winter, anyway. But if those with disabilities, children, things like that, pregnant mothers, that kind of thing, are directly exposed. Yeah, those groups are, there is a lot of waste around. You look at the pictures that come through, daily now on the news programs. You just need to, just have a look at what the streets are like. Have a look at the rubble. Have a look at the how cleanly the streets are in the war zones to get a real flavour of war's impact on the environment. Not to mention the targeting of nuclear installations, which in Europe back in the 80s, the Chernobyl incident is still very much fresh in people's minds. It very nearly irradiated Europe. It did irradiate parts of Belarus and Ukraine, and had other effects. For example, fell farmers, as we call them in Cumbria, people who are pastoral farmers, sheep and all of this, could no longer sell into the, sell lamb, I should say, the butchery and all of this. Couldn't do that anymore because of the top of the hills and mountains being irradiated. And that's still true in places like Norway, in some areas of Scotland. So, yeah, all of this is one big environmental issue. It's, not
to backtrack or change the trajectory here, but when that happened, when the Chernobyl incident happened, there was a lot of, radiation pollution. And you say, certainly Belarusia, and Ukraine were affected. But did Russia not get any of that radiation? I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out why in the world, they would be threatening the nuclear plants in Ukraine, because it seems to me like, you can't control the air. So it seems like they could be unleashing, nuclear hazardous material on themselves. Is it because of the airstreams? They know they won't come, or do they just not care? Do you know, can you speak on that at all?
I can't, I don't have any real insight into, Russian military commanders' personal objectives, but it's apparent that in most conflicts, you want to knock out infrastructure. That's not just road, rail, that's also power. And Ukraine does have nuclear power plants, and they do produce a large amount of Ukraine's power. So if you can knock them out, hoping that there won't be any consequences, or things like the alleged targeting. We keep hearing about these smart missiles and all of that. I just defy anyone to find a missile ever fired that hasn't strayed, like into Poland, for example, or that have killed civilians. Again, war isn't, it's not something that should be celebrated. People die as a immediate cause of shell, shrapnel, etc., or the consequences of, as we've said, waste and other environmental concerns.
And why should we care about waste management in Ukraine?
Well, why?
Or about environmental issues in Ukraine? I would guess one thing might be food supply.
Well, there you go. You can look at it from a global perspective, which is, grain supplies, things like that. But it's very short-sighted. I think the issues with the grain supply in Ukraine are a flavour as to what's to come if we don't tackle the broader environmental concern. The rate that glaciers are melting, for example, in the Himalayas, I have a saying, when people say, the average person, well, the average person's Chinese, maybe Indian now. I've just seen the population stat, but about 3 billion to 4 billion people are dependent on glacial melt water. Once the glaciers are gone, there isn't fresh water. You know, you just think about that in terms of how many times you turn a tap on.
It would be too conspiratorial. But I mean, there really are conspiracies. Some conspiracies are true. But I know that you remember my friend Gloria Amendola, Jay. She passed away a few years ago, but we were talking about these very things, and particularly about water and the water supply, the world's water supply. And we noted back then that there were several very wealthy families, like the Bush family for one, who were going around buying up aquifers. And it's like, okay, they know something, they know something's coming. And, I think water is going to be one of the biggest problems that the earth is going to have if we don't do something about it now. And, I don't know if it should be legal that private citizens should be able to buy up all the water, but have you heard anything about that type of thing going on in your neck of the woods?
I know Sean wants to come in, but I just need to tell a quick story about Nestle, whose CEO once said that water is not a human right, it should be a commodity. Now, we made a big deal about that here, and, he was not quite backtracking, but there was a lot of embarrassment with Nestle. For a planet that's mostly on its surface has water, you wonder why it is we've got a problem. It's because we don't drink salt water.
That's right.
Sorry, Sean.
No problem. Yeah, I don't think you need any conspiracy there to see that you've got people in positions of power allowing big corporations to pollute our freshwater supplies left, right, and centre, both in the UK and America, and make that connection to why people Absolutely, yeah. I don't think there's much. There's not. You don't need to delve too deep into a conspiracy there to think, what does every human need to survive? Fresh water. Oh, we're taking a bung to allow big oil companies and stuff to leak. BP, for instance, with a big oil leak in the.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Gulf. Oh, Flint, Michigan.
Absolutely.
If anyone's listening from Flint, it's not a conspiracy. It happened.
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh.
I think we look back 50, 60, 70 years ago, you'd struggle to find anyone who would buy bottled water from somewhere. This is a very new thing, commodification of what should be a human rights.
But calling it a conspiracy doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, there are conspiracies. There are groups, especially, big business, big government, that do collude on policy and everything else. There is a conspiracy. It doesn't mean, I think conspiracy's gotten a bad definition because there's so many crazy conspiracies that go out there. But truly, governments conspire with each other, within themselves, businesses conspire. So it's like a tacit agreement that we're going to do everything we can to help out the big guys, and they're going to, turn around and then scratch our backs as well.
I wouldn't disagree that there's conspiracy there. All I would say is it's so obvious they clearly don't even care that it's that obvious anymore.
Yes, that's it. We've gotten, accustomed to it. So we just expect it, I guess. But anyhow, so Sean, I know that you teach courses on environmentalism. And what would you say are the main issues that you cover? What do you think of those is the most important, if that's even able to be identified?
I think the biggest issue, well, if not the biggest, the easiest to solve is shortening global supply chains, stopping moving products all around the planet on the back of container ships, lorries, or trucks, as they're called over there.
Mm-hmm.
And stopping that, producing the things we need in the country where they're going to be consumed, and reducing waste. I think that global supply chain where you have to pack things, preserve them, then put them on the back of wagons or ships, planes, send them around the world, often on multiple trips around the world to go through different parts of the process, is just absolutely ridiculous. And it's externalizing the cost of the products we're buying. By that I mean the true cost of what we buy isn't what we pay for it. It's part of the damage to ecosystems, environments, to people's lands and stuff, which causes displacement and then leads to sort of weird political ideas about immigrants coming in and that being a negative thing, completely missing the whole point that we've just completely decimated their land. They can't grow food anymore. The water's destroyed, and we've put a factory there instead. I think that's the quickest thing we can do, is reducing global supply chains and holding big corporations to account for the damage they do.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think this kind of change is going to be affected? I guess by maybe electing the right people into our governments that are going to be addressing these issues and caring about them instead of just sidelining them every time they come up.
I think, to be honest, right now, we're too late for that now. We're too late to put our hope in electing someone who's going to make a difference. Both me and James work a lot with the trade unions and are both trade unionists. I think that's where change is going to come, by workers getting organised and realising this has got to stop, and we've got to push these companies into it, which is why we educate trade unionists in environmental issues, and realising that it doesn't suit any of us to be using these massive global supply chains, because it ends up deteriorating workers' rights around the world, because labor's going to cut each other.
Also, I would imagine that it's contributing heavily to the shortages in the supermarkets. It's, you've experienced that in Europe and in the UK. I part of that with the whole Brexit problem, but we're starting to see that here. Of course, we saw it during the pandemic. We had the whole toilet paper issue, the toilets issue. It was like it was worth its weight in gold. People were buying it up and hoarding it and everything else. But now that that's died down, we're starting to see, empty shelves. For instance, in preparation for Thanksgiving dinner, there are certain things that must be made, especially in my family, but it's pretty standard in America, the dishes that are served for Thanksgiving. And I have to tell you, we had to go to a few stores to get the ingredients, all the ingredients, and we still didn't get exactly, never could get exactly what we wanted. And we would go to a store in that place where the ingredients were supposed to be was just empty. And that's never, ever happened, because the stores know there's going to be a rush on those products, cranberry sauce, stuffing mix, cornbread mix, turkeys, all the standard things. And so they stock up, because they know it's very predictable. But it didn't happen this time. And so I was wondering if it was a supply chain issue.
I think as well, there's a double thing going on here, both in the UK and the USA, where we've had in recent times, certainly now in the UK and not so long ago in the USA, where the people who come and pick all the food in your country are being marginalized. You talk about building walls and people being demonized, and that labor is gone. And people are then scratching their heads wondering why there's no food.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really that simple for not all of it, but for a big part of it, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's it. The way that we treat people who do the jobs that we don't is absolutely crucial. And it turns out if you tell them to go away and they do, you've got a problem. And I think just on the supply chain thing, it's absolutely vital. If we're going to affect realistic change, it's going to be in workplaces. Individually, I mean, my experience when delivering these programs has been people feel, on the Monday, this is too big a problem for me to deal with. But by the end of the week, when it's we can deal with it and we can take that, that strength in numbers is the way that change is affected. And we've got some really good examples of that in workplaces. But things like just reminded me, Sean, of things like planned and perceived obsolescence. The idea that your phone has something inbuilt into it that will destroy its battery. So you get the next model and then you discard your phone. Or the what's called
and it goes into the waste of the world.
Well, it's the you've got aesthetic labor then as well. So this year you need flat shoes, but the year after it'll be heels. Or you're not eating that, are you? Let's eat this. And couple of that with you bought fruit. I mean, I saw something in the UK which just astounded me. Seeing a cucumber with plastic wrapping. It's got its own wrapping naturally, but people wouldn't buy it because it's you've got this perception that it's not fresh and things like that. And all that plastic does is just go into the ultimately the global ocean or into a landfill, polluting place for generations. And if you want to continue like this, I mean, we were remarking before the show, let me be the one to bring it up. Certain prospective leaders who say things like, global warming won't affect anywhere for 300 years. Well, I'll tell you what, the planet will be fine. The planet's been through warming periods. We're in a warming period. We've hit the accelerator, or we've hit the gas, and we're advancing it. The planet sees us as a surface nuisance. It's not the planet we should be worrying about. We're terraforming our own species from living on this planet. And I'm not sure that running off to Mars or the moon is exactly the best thing when we haven't resolved our problems down here.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's another thing. That's another pollutant are the jet fueled rocket ships, which is weird. I mean, I don't believe that we do not have a way of propelling rockets that is not, that heavy jet engine fuel type system. But now here I am with the conspiracies. But I think, and I'm not the only one that thinks this, because this is after conversations with people that know more about it than I do, that we do have that technology, but they can't use it for the NASA can't use it, because if we know we have a way to shoot a rocket to the moon using free energy or alternative energy, then people would say, well, then why can't I power my car with that? Or why can't I power my house with that? And then that would start a whole, rush toward that type of energy. And then fossil fuel would.
Tesla's the example that we use all the time, but again, it was wirelessly powering a city. You know, we know that there's ways to, you know, transmit energy. You know, the one that I keep on talking about is if we can have Wi-Fi from satellites orbiting the planet, we could have a fleet of solar panels in a Lagrange point orbiting, you know, these points between the Earth, Sun, or Earth, Moon, microwaving energy back down to Earth. There's lots of solutions. The thing and the problem is, people who have the most don't want to lose it.
Right.
So we've, you know, the one key thing when we're looking at the crisis that faces us is, you know, the solutions are already there. At the moment, we're not going to get to those solutions without addressing the core problem. And the core problem is, for a long time, we've waited for politicians to act. Too late, free meals and all of that. We have to do something. The effect on us is stark. It's not just the water supply. You've got collapse of food supplies. We've already seen collapse in honeybees, who pollinate, and all of that. The amount of ice that is melting, 40%, that's 40% of sea ice in the Arctic has been lost since 1979. That white cap reflects a lot of heat and light back into space. Without that, it's just hitting water and warming. We've seen a collapse in fish stocks. We've seen, you know, it's not overfishing. There's another part of this problem. But also, go have a look at the coral reefs on off the coast of Australia. Preferably don't fly, because what you're going to find is bleached, dead reefs. That's due to us acidifying the global ocean. So I suppose, you know, we mentioned conspiracy. If you sat there going, "Oh no, it's all one big," you know, it's one big conspiracy. It's all of this, you know. So you know, they're lying for some agenda is the one that I love. Well, okay. If you like betting and gambling and all of that, I just wager you one thing: if you're wrong, you're dead. You know, or you might be right. I know out of those two which one I'd rather lean towards.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the things that, you know, people who are interested in environmental issues, all the things that they want to implement, there's nothing that they want implemented that's going to hurt anything. So it's like, it's going to be better no matter what, whether we're, you know, on the edge of destruction or not. What's the problem? You know, but if you're wrong, you know, we're all dead. If we're wrong, we've still just improved, you know, the situation on the planet. But, you know, it seems to me like it's an easy choice. You know,
and that's
one thing can kill you, one thing can't. So I would use the thing that can't.
But that's it, and Ronnie. I mean, if this system we were living in that's killing the planet gave us all a better life, then you could maybe argue why we'd want to resist so much to changing it. But we're seeing the biggest acceleration in inequality between the haves and have-nots, and not. I mean, we're in the UK and America are seeing acceleration there, but if you look at just the global north, global south, so Western Europe, America, and the global south being the not so privileged countries, usually at the expense of imperialism back in the day and going forward now. None of us are benefiting from this system apart from a handful of people, and literally less than enough to fill a bus. They're the people who are benefiting from this system, while the rest of us are on the slow and steadily speeding up march to our destruction to benefit a few people on this planet. It's not. And what when we do address these
Disgusting.
changes, yeah, it's insane. But when we do address these changes, we need to ensure that this is led by the many, not the few, and we take back control. And it's a worker-led green revolution, for lack of a better phrase. But that workers aren't left behind in this, that jobs are protected, that people get reskilled into whatever transition we go.
That's it. I mean, with the infrastructure legislation that was passed, we're set new businesses, building factories, that are going to, improve our situation on the planet, and people are, going to be trained and get new jobs. It's not like jobs are disappearing and nothing is coming up in their places. And I realize it's scary for someone that's worked somewhere for 40 years and everything, the whole industry is going to change, and you feel like you're out of it and left behind. I know that is scary, but change is always scary, and there are always growing pains. So if we could just harden ourselves and make those changes, on the other side, we're all going to be a lot better off.
I don't even think it's anything to do with hardening ourselves. I think people have ended up defining themselves by their job role. And I'm a bus driver, I'm a teacher, I'm a this or that. I think instead of that, we need to start thinking of ourselves as humans. And we're not the job we do, but there are skills there in all them jobs that we have that are completely transferable to new things. And this has been the same from the beginning of time. With people have skills that they can use to do other tasks. And we need to move away from this idea that we should be loyal to these corporations, or, I've worked for Ford for 50 years and I'm a Ford man. It's that sort of idea that you're valued by a company is ridiculous. You're only valuable to them as long as you're making them profit. But yeah, we need to move away from that idea of I'm a job role, because we're all people with emotions and lives outside of our work, which are much more important than going checking in for 8 hours a day and doing your job.
Well, and then another job, and then another job. Your skills, are absolutely transferable, as Sean says. What your job duties entail are different, but your skills, your ability to talk to other people, and communicate and all of this, that's totally transferable. If we start.
It's interesting what Sean said, though, about, you're not your job. We are so plugged into that idea. I mean, even just at the beginning of the show, before we started, we said, had discussion, how do you want to be introduced? What is your title? What is your job? But and I remember, certain times when, I had certain jobs that were like pretty cool. So I felt like I was pretty cool. And then if something happened, then I felt like crap. It was, you do identify with your job, with the money that you make, and that kind of success. But really, it does sort of lend itself to us forgetting about, hey, I'm a person. I'm Renee. That's who I am. I've done this, I've done that, but that's not who I am. And it's hard to think of that. Now, I wonder if either of you have seen much on your end of the news about a lot of companies or employees at companies organizing here to start trade unions, to form unions. I've not seen that before in, at least not a number of years, but we're hearing about it more and more. What do you attribute that to? And, how can that be fostered? Because it's about the workers. And we've already discussed in the past trickle-down economics. We're tired of the trickle. We're the ones that are making the money. We're the ones that are producing everything. It's like, and then we're paying upward to the rich people, and then whatever crumbs side drop onto us, then we should be happy to get.
I think it's a natural reaction to the inequality we see. I mean, just briefly, when I'm teaching trade union reps, I always play a short 5-minute video of Chris Smalls in the JFK8 Amazon location and what they did there, and it's so inspiring to see. And it's not anything new. It's not anything far flung out there. It's standard trade union organizing that is just there. It's looking after each other. I think the reaction from workers organizing is simply because we're needed now more than ever.
I totally agree. It again comes back to that notion of you're useful to a company when you're making the money, but then when the company's not making money, you're laid off. With no thanks, and we've just seen this with a large social media company. But I think, I don't know, there seems to be a little bit more of an idea that, where power is. I think there's been a bit of a COVID effect too. I think people being isolated from family and friends and all of this in various lockdowns has given people a bit more of an idea as to where the priorities are. And that's not going to jobs that feel like they're destroying your soul, but you need it to pay bills, that people are actually taking a step back and saying, well, hold on a second. How do you get, I think it's Jeff Bezos, if he were to give his staff in January 2020, a $53,000 or thereabouts pay rise, he would still be richer at the end of the lockdown period than he was at the start. And I think people are beginning to see that, we do need to address inequalities. We do need to address the massive imbalance between the lowest paid and highest in an organization. And I think it's contagious. I think when you see victories, Amazon, Starbucks, these places that we didn't ever think would unionize. I don't understand why it's a dirty word. It's democracy, isn't it? It's workplace democracy. People vote and discuss their pay, and environmental issues and lots of other issues that affect them. It's always surprised me that in the country that was founded on liberty and democracy, that some people seem to be totally against that. And it just strikes me as strange.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's liberty and democracy as long as you don't impact people's profits. They're happy for you to have the freedom to choose a Porsche or a Lamborghini or a BMW, but don't infringe on how you're able to live your life and get by day to day.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit like the worm has turned just slightly. Here we're hearing more about organizing and striking and that sort of thing. Hopefully that's going to continue to flourish and gain ground, because honestly, here in the United States, many people just don't make enough money to live, even though they're working. And that's just ridiculous. People have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. It's, in places like Los Angeles, where I live, it become almost impossible to find a place to live that you can afford. It is absolutely out of race. And we just have a new mayor here that we've just elected, Karen Bass, and that was going to be one of her main focuses, was handling this exorbitant housing crisis that we have here. But it seems like there is kind of a new wave of thinking about things that's gaining a little bit of ground. I don't know if that's what
think
you see, James?
Yeah, I think are you living to work or working to live?
Yeah,
I think just tying a few things up there as well, where you have people who are having to work several jobs, or on poverty pay and things like this. Your ability to be environmental, your ability to care, even though you might think I want to do something, is limited. The choice of
well,
foods,
yeah,
choice of
that's
foods,
right.
if we call gentrification, pushing, middle class, I think you call them, but working class people out of cities means that if they have a job in the city, they're having to drive, which is causing smog, pollution, and it's that vicious cycle. You address pay equality and you address equality in workplaces. The benefits are not just environmental, but it means that people have surplus money to spend at a shop. And that surplus money at the shop means that, companies profits, the Mar and Par store, things like that. They improve, things like this. So it has the knock-on effect is substantial, but it won't work if we are being driven down to the bottom. The race to the bottom. It won't work.
Yep. Well, I'm heartened by some of that I'm seeing, from the ground up. Certainly not from the top down, but I guess that's how we'll have to affect change, and that seems the way that it always is when the people get enough of it and start to realize and start to see it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be this way. We're allowing this to be this way. And it's time for change.
Yeah. And, again, don't be trapped in a prison, a psychological prison that's been imposed on you. There's they call them national treasures in Britain, but David Attenborough, who, explained the effects on a whale of microplastic beads. The next day, we had companies falling over each other, banning plastic straws, cardboard this and all of that. And that was just one person. Imagine if, lots of people said, we've had enough.
Right.
Enough.
But it's going to take two. You said the corporations, because if we go to the store and the only, the food that we want is in a package, of plastic, and that's the only thing that's available, then what are we going to do? We're not going to not buy food. So we've got to start changing the mindsets of these companies and changing the packaging, and getting rid of the packaging where it's not necessary, like on bananas and cucumbers.
Oh, there's one thing, visitors to my house have commented that, God, your toilet rolls are strange. And the simple reason is because I won't buy toilet rolls that have a cardboard center. It's completely wasteful. So there's lots of things that you can do, and the more you,
where do you find toilet tissue that doesn't have a roll in the middle?
Well, laws of supply and demand. If you keep on buying it, then they'll eventually start supplying it.
I think just before I wrap up, I think as well, the most mind-blowing thing is these companies aren't people; they're just entities that have been imagined out of nothing. We're all here serving and slogging our guts out and spending our lives generating profit for some entity that isn't a real thing. It's a fiction someone's imagined, like Kellogg's or I don't know, BP. They're not people. They're not things that we can hurt their feelings by destroying them. So I think that's certainly one thing that's interesting to think about.
Oh, it is. It is. And before we go, we've had some pushback. for a long time, but most recently from former President Donald Trump, who says that, we're worrying about climate change, but nothing's even going to happen for 300 years and blah, blah, blah. Could either or both of you comment on that? Because I know that certainly in 300 years, things are going to be a hell of a lot worse. But climate change, the effects of climate change, we're feeling now. So, I think that was a little misleading that, it's not going to hurt anyone in 300 years. And then secondly, if it was going to destroy the earth in 300 years, then why wouldn't we be worried about that? What about our progeny?
I think, to be honest, if climate change was going to take 300 years, then that's a complete fallacy. But also, climate change happening doesn't hurt Donald Trump and the far right. That sort of the effects of climate change, mass people being displaced, having to move around, people being driven into deprivation, that tends to push people into more reactionary politics and voting for people like Donald Trump. So I think him and people of his ilk have a direct benefit from everyone else being screwed and pushed into deprivation and moved from the land. And
it's don't worry about it now. Let me carry on as I am, because it's 300 years.
Wait till I'm dead and gone before you do anything.
300 years ago, the United States wasn't really around, was it? The Industrial Revolution that started the problems with the environment was 300 years ago. If you imagine that rate of change from being stuck on the ground to being in the air in 300 years, imagine how much things could change, not necessarily in the positive in that time. I think now's the time to act.
Yeah, and speaking of time, we're all out of it. It is time to close the show. Sean Halsell, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your knowledge in the subject matter. And James, thank you as usual. You got to be here.
You, Renee and James.
All right, everyone. Just wanted to say quickly, big changes coming up at KGRA. Keep your eye on the website. We're going to be having all kinds of new content up there and some things that you'll also hear and see on the air. So keep an eye on kgradb.com. Join and become a member, and we'll benefit from all the wonderful changes that are coming up at KGRA. Take care, everybody. Bye.